Hello, painting class. Um, it is 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, so it's time to get back to talking about and working on our paintings. I've heard from some of you, not all of you, but hopefully I'll get something back from everybody this next week. If you haven't had a chance to do any work, now's the time to contact me and talk about it and figure it out. So this is the live demo that we did last week. It is not completely dry, especially up here in the very white areas. The paint that I used last week is Permalba White by Weber. And it's kind of on the oilier side, and I had forgotten about how oily it is. So I still have the paint over here on my makeshift palette. These are all old colors that are all dry from previous paintings that I've been working on at home. So I used the cold black and this Permalba White. This Permalba White pile is still wet, and it's not really, I can keep using it today. So if we are looking at what we have for the rest of the semester, looking at all the stuff we're going to do, I'm going to try to use the alternative tools for this same skull painting. If you remember the first part of the last painting, I tried to do that. It was a little bit too wet and messy. So I'm going to do that in the next stage and start to kind of use different tools. But because it's still a little bit wet, I'm going to wait till next week. So what I plan to do for today is, if I'm looking at painting one stuff and our final, I've started to think about my final. If you remember the final from last semester, it's over here, the Saint Damien. So I kind of painted from a sculpture that was a Michelangelo sculpture. We added column, and I had already had the idea that I wanted to add the Sacred Heart, put a little eyeball on that. So if you've been looking at some of the social media stuff for the final, I've been trying to 3D print a copy of this Hercules or the Boxer. I have a 3D print that kind of cuts across a slice of a sculpture face, and I wanted to do one that went more up and down with somebody that had a beard. So I don't have a 3D printer, and I have been trying to twist arms for people, instructors who have 3D printers, but I don't think it's going to come in the next day or so, or even week. So I'm going to plan to use an image. I have a sculpture of this loaded up on my iPad. There's a lot of programs like Sketchfab or other apps where you can basically manipulate a 3D model that somebody has already created. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do, is I'm going to find an angle and kind of plot it out. So this is me kind of taking one of those 3D models and then kind of drawing on top of it and trying to kind of imagine the structure. So what I want from painting 2 and painting 1 people, if you have any ideas about what I should also include in the picture, I like to try to think about things that are symbolic or that can be linked. I think the thing that's I'm starting to pick up on some of this stuff is that it ends up being, I would say, leaning on the masculine. I don't mind maybe trying to incorporate something a little bit maybe more feminine or more graceful into the picture, but I don't know what it is yet. So I'm going to start doing some sketches, but if you have a suggestion, I'd like you to go ahead and send that. I will probably send out maybe a quick email asking you for any suggestions that you might have, since you kind of helped pick some of the things that went into the last one, I figured that would be a good idea. I do have a big canvas outside, so I'm going to do this on the right size. It's at least 18 by 24. It might even be a little bit bigger than that, but that's what I've got at home. Or if I really am feeling ambitious, I do have canvas and I can cut a 24 by 36. So for painting one people, what do you do when your painting is wet and you can't work on it if you've been working on it? Well, if you have your palette project, and like I've asked you to do, I want you to maybe try to make 2 paintings that are different. They're using different things. So there's going to be I'm kind of maybe combining abstract pointillist, wet and wet, a la Prima for this skull. I was thinking of doing a blue underpainting there. As far as palette goes, I was probably going to use kind of like a limited earth palette or a simple palette. Maybe limited earth. So then I can kind of check that off. And then finally, this is a Vanitas theme. I've got a skull. I've got my Stein. Maybe I could put a little bit of money in there at some point. So maybe that's what I'm going to go through and do for that painting. So now if I'm going to spend some time, what I should do right now, since I can't paint, I haven't finished thinking about my final, is maybe pick what is my second painting going to be. So if I'm looking at this, I think style-wise, that's going to leave me with palette knife, which I think is a good idea, a fine idea. I might have to go digging and finding one of those before I kind of get started. As far as approach, paint on a wood panel. I do have a wood panel, and maybe that's what I'll actually paint my final on, rather than this canvas. I don't really want to do a blind contour. What I think I might try to do is I have some other paints over here back behind the camera here, and I have some Williamsburg paints, and a lot of them are earth colors. So I think I might do kind of a reddish earth color block in and have that be my underpainting, and that's what I can actually work on today. As far as maybe a palette that goes on top, maybe I'll do just an intro drawing today, drawing with the paint, and what I'll do is maybe do the simple palette and kind of go over that maybe next week when I can kind of look at it. The simple palette, again, is by the artist Mark Carter. He is at, let's see, what is it? Draw Mix Paint. So that is his website, drawmixpaint.com. He has a brand of art supplies that's called Geneva brand. They're very nice. I have not bought any, but I plan to maybe try that out at some point. Subject, let's probably go with some kind of maybe landscape, abstract landscape. That's similar to what I normally end up picking, is something like palette knife, maybe some different kind of underpainting or a wood panel, simple palette, and a landscape. That seems like it might be something interesting. So I'm going to pause right now and let myself find some images and kind of get set up, and then I'll come right back and get started with the block in.